of announcements. Mrs. Lauer is out of the country. We thought we had her via Zoom or Google Meet. We've lost her, so we're going to proceed that she's not here. And we also have a special presentation of a swearing-in ceremony of a new board member this evening, Mrs. Carrie Labella. Please, her family, feel free to take photos and participate in that way.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Carrie Labella, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution of the State of Indiana, and the laws of the United States and State of Indiana. I will faithfully execute the duties of my office as a member of this governing body and will do so in a manner in compliance with the Code of Ethics of the Board of School Trustees of the Vigo County School Corporation. So help me God. Thank you. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Mrs. Labella. And congratulations to our other new board members and returning board members this evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order and welcome you and Happy New Year. If we can please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and you may be seated. We'll begin the evening with roll call. Dr. Goller.
Mr. Berger.
Here.
Mrs. Labella.
Here.
Mrs. Killian.
Here.
Mrs. Lohr.
Present.
Miss Lauer. Mr. Skelton.
Here.
Mr. Warner.
Present.
We'd like to open this evening with our organization of our board for the 2023 school year. At this time, typically it is the former president that will serve as chairperson. If there are no objections, I will go ahead and take that role until a new president is elected this evening. Are there any objections to my serving as chair? We will move forward with the nomination of president of the 2023 school board.
Madam President, I'd like to nominate Amy, please, to president.
We have a nomination for Mrs. Amy Lohr.
Second.
We have a second. Are there any other nominations? At this time, we have a motion and a second for Mrs. Amy Lohr to serve as president of the 2023 school board. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstention? Congratulations, Mrs. Lohr.
Okay, at this time, we are slated to elect a vice president. Do we have a nomination?
I'd like
For
to
vice
nominate Rick Berger.
Okay, we have a nomination for Rick Berger. Is there a second?
I would like to second.
And a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Abstention? Congratulations, Mr. Berger.
Thank you.
Next on our docket, we have election of a secretary. Is there a nomination from the board?
I would nominate Carrie Lavella, if she would take it. second it.
Okay, we have a nomination and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of Carrie LaBella as secretary signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. And those opposed? Any abstentions? All right, congratulations, Mrs. LaBella. At this point, we need to name our legislative liaison to the Indiana State School Board Association. I would like to put forward Stacy Killian for that position due to her role on the state school board's legislative committee for consideration.
I'd like to second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Any abstentions? Mrs. Killian will be our legislative liaison. Next is the appointment of a board member to the Vigo County Parent Network. I also have Mrs. Killian down to take on that work. She's been in that position already and would like to continue serving.
I'd second that.
Okay, we have a second. Point of order. Do we need seconds in every time we have an appointment here and a vote? Okay, just wanted to make sure that we were following the right rules here. Okay, so we have a second and any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And any abstentions? Congratulations. Next up is members of the Policy Committee. The Policy Committee is one of the several standing committees that has public meetings. Right now, my list includes myself, Stacy Killian, and I do not know the third person.
Carrie LaBella.
Carrie LaBella. Okay. So I think we can count that as the motion for Amy Lohr, Stacy Killian, and Carrie LaBella to serve on the Policy Committee. Is there a second?
I second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstention? Okay. Policy Committee is set. Appointment to attend meetings of the Board of Directors of the Vigo County Education Foundation. Mrs. Killian has been serving in that capacity and would like to continue. Is there a second for her?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Just thank you.
Absolutely. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstentions? Congratulations, Mrs. Killian. Next, we have appointment of board members to attend meetings of the Career and Technical Education Advisory Committee. Is there a motion to nominate members for this?
I have a motion to nominate Mr. Rick Berger and Mr. Ken Warner with Mr. J.D. Skelton serving as an alternate.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? And abstention. All right. Up next is the Bond Oversight Committee. Again, that's one of the three committees that we have that have public meetings. Do we have nominations for who will serve there?
I have nominations for myself, Carrie LaBella, and Ken Warner serving on the Bond Oversight Committee with Amy Lohr serving as an alternate.
I'll go ahead and second that. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And abstentions? All right. Up next, we have appointment of a board member to attend meetings of the Building Trade Council Committee. Do we have a motion for nominations there?
I have a motion to have two board members serve on that committee as J.D. Skelton and Mr. Ken Warner. I do not have an alternate selected at this time or nominated if someone is willing to do so.
I'd be happy to serve as the alternate.
I will amend my nomination to include J.D. Skelton, Ken Warner, and Amy Lohr as alternate.
I second that nomination.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? All right, number 13 here, appointment of board member to attend meetings of the Health and Wellness Committee. Do we have a motion for nominations there?
I move to have Mr. J.D. Skelton, Mrs. Jackie Lauer to serve on the Health and Wellness Committee with Stacy Killian as an alternate.
I second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? Next, we have appointment of board members to the Finance Committee. This is the third of those three committees that I mentioned earlier. What are the nominations that we have for that?
At this time, I have a nomination of Mrs. Carrie Labella, Mr. Rick Berger, and myself, Stacy Killian, to serve on the Finance Committee with Ken Warner serving as an alternate.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? The next is appointment of a board member to attend the city redevelopment meetings. I am the appointed member of that commission appointed by the mayor. So we can go ahead and make a motion, but that's a mayoral appointment, so.
I will move that Amy Lohr retains her position with the City Redevelopment Council and Mr. Ken Warner serving as an alternate.
And I'll second that.
Motion and a second has been made. Is there discussion? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And any abstentions? Next is the appointment of a board member to attend county redevelopment meetings. Do we have a nomination?
I nominate Mr. Rick Berger to serve in the county redevelopment role along with an alternate of Jackie Lauer, who has previously served in that role.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? The final point on our organizational meeting is the approval of the 2023 annual board calendar, and I would like to bring Dr. Balatevich into that to explain.
Yes, good evening. Typically, we set a calendar for the school year for our school board, and usually those are business meetings. I would like to make the recommendation that we change some of those business meetings to work sessions. Work sessions allow our board members in a more open forum to discuss items and issues. And so I would like to propose that we institute 8 work sessions throughout this year. I could name them, but if you'd like to have an opportunity to discuss that, it would be appreciated, but this is the direction we would like to go.
Do you have any suggestions for which of
Yes.
these?
February 13th, March the 6th, April the 10th, May the 8th, June the 12th, August 21st, October 23rd, and maybe December 11th, where we would have both a business and a work session.
May I also make a point on the July 11th and the 25th? I believe those are dates for Tuesdays. Are we wanting those to continue on Mondays?
Yes, we would want those on Mondays.
So would that be the July 10th and July 24th?
That would be correct.
So could I have a motion to accept motion to accept the amended calendar. Is there a second?
I would second it.
Any further discussion?
I just think having work sessions moving forward will provide for more in-depth conversation that our community can see the board take place with, as well as that transparency that we have heard so much about, that I feel like this is a great way to move forward to show that with our community. And I hope we have great attendance for those sessions.
I agree, I hope so too. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Any abstentions? This time I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion?
If you wouldn't mind, to make a motion to adjourn and open the Board of Finance meeting at the same time. That would
I
be
can
great.
do it for both of them, so there's the motion, yes.
I will second the motion to adjourn and open the Board of Finance.
Sorry, do we have a second there?
I would second the motion to close the organizational meeting and open the Board of Finance meeting at the same time.
Okay, perfect. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And abstentions. All right, at this time, we have the Board of Finance Committee meeting. We're going to begin this with public comment. I don't have anyone who has signed up to comment on the Public Finance Committee meeting, but if you would like to, come to the podium and speak. Our policy indicates 3 minutes for everyone who wants to come and speak to the board. And we'll let you know when you have 30 seconds up. And then if you do come and speak, we just ask that you sign up, so if there's some follow-up or you need information from us, we can get that back to you. I'm practicing good wait time. Seeing no interest at this time, I think we'll move ahead with the approval of the Board of Finance Committee meeting minutes from January 10th, 2022.
I would like to move to accept the approval of the Board of Finance meeting minutes from January 10th of 2022.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? Minutes have been approved. At this point, I'd like to call Mrs. Donna Wilson to the podium to review. Do you want to do the review of the investments first before? Okay, so we'll do that first. Thank you.
President Lohr, Dr. Balatevich, and members of the Board of School Trustees. Pursuant to Indiana Code, the Board of School Trustees is required to meet annually, elect officers from their membership as the Board of Finance officers, receive and review the report of investments of the prior year, and review the overall investment policy of the school corporation as contained in Board Policy 6144. It is recommended that the annual Board of Finance organization meeting be declared to be in session at this meeting, and it is further recommended that the officers of the Board of School Trustees elected for 2023 be declared the officers of the Board of Finance. And it is finally recommended that the minutes showing these actions be included with the minutes of the regular meeting of the Board of School Trustees held this evening. Total interest income received in 2022 was $232,428.19 as shown in this evening's board packet. 2022 interest earnings were $222,261.10 on money market accounts and $10,167.09 on checking accounts. All interest earned, other than the interest earned on the insurance reserve fund, was receipted into the education fund of the school district. During 2022, 3 certificates of deposits were purchased from corporation cash balances, $9 million from the rainy day fund and $6 million from the education fund. Accrued interest on these CDs is not reflected in the 2022 interest amount, as we report on the cash basis of accounting, recognizing the interest income when actually received. The 3 current CDs will generate over $470,000 in interest earnings in 2023, and that interest will be reported this time next year. At your pleasure, we would like a motion to name the officers of the Board of Finance, along with a recommendation to approve the report of investments for 2022, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I would like to make a motion to approve the review of revenue from investments at this time.
Should we take that separately from the nominations? Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving the review of revenue, signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Any abstentions?
I have to abstain because of my job.
Okay. Do we get Jackie back?
Well, hello.
Mrs. Lauer, welcome.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
We are just at the beginning of the Board of Finance meeting. We have just approved the review of revenue of investments, and we're about to move on to the election of the Board of Finance officers. Dr. Balatovich?
Yes, at this time, maybe Mrs. Lauer, I don't know if you're able to mute.
Yes.
Can you mute your?
You hear a lot of background music?
I do.
I'll try and move.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to nominate Ms. Donna Wilson as our treasurer.
Do you need a second? A second.
I think we,
You need to make that, that's a recommendation, and you need to make the motion, or someone, a board
do you want
member
to make
does.
the motion?
Yeah, that's
I
fine.
make the motion to approve Donna.
Okay, and we have a second, yes? Did you
Yes,
second
second.
that, Rick? Okay, all right, sorry, there's a little confusion right now. We have a motion to accept Donna Wilson, and on the Board of Finance officers, and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed? Any abstentions?
You want to come up and?
Jackie, can you hear us? Jackie, can you hear us?
Jackie, can you hit mute on your computer?
Can we just turn that down for right
Yeah,
now?
there you go.
He's gonna pull the cord.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
Just, she's trying to go to a different place, it looks like, so just leave it there for right now. Yeah, that's fine. Just come back and turn it back up when she's,
I'll try to watch her when we're voting as
Okay,
well.
yeah, help me remember to
Yeah.
wait. Okay.
at this time, I'd like to recommend Cindy Dehart as our deputy treasurer.
I would like to motion that Cindy Dehart serve as our deputy treasurer.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? Oh, Jackie, I'm sorry. Did she say aye?
Mhm,
Okay.
yes.
I just said to wait, and then I didn't do it. All right.
She's walking again.
Pass this, right?
Yeah, we are.
Okay. We just need a bank signature. All right, at this point, Mrs. Wilson, could you come speak to us about the bank signatures?
President Lohr, Dr. Balatovich, members of the board. Per board policy, 2 manual signatures are to be affixed to any check in excess of $1 million of the school corporation. We like to make sure that we have adequate personnel on hand at any time if such a check needs to be written. And so for your pleasure this evening in the board packet is a resolution authorizing myself, Cindy Dehart, Tom Balatovich, and Karen Goler as authorized signers on our checks. This resolution then will be taken to the banks and used for check writing authority.
I would like to move to approve the approval of the resolution and for bank signatures.
Second, please.
A motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Any questions for Mrs. Wilson? Okay, I've been informed that we need to go ahead and do a roll call vote due to Mrs. Lauer's distant location. So could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Berger,
Yes.
Mrs. LaBella,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian,
Aye.
Mrs. Lohr,
Aye.
Miss Lauer,
Yes,
Yes.
she said aye.
She said aye.
Mr. Skelton,
Aye.
Mr. Warner.
Aye.
At this point, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the Board of Finance meeting and open our regular meeting.
I will move to close our Board of Finance meeting and move to open our regular board meeting.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Do I need a roll call for that? I'm sorry, but I need a roll call, please.
Mr. Berger,
Yes.
Mrs. LaBella,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian,
Aye.
Mrs. Lohr,
Aye.
Miss Lauer,
She said aye.
Mr. Skelton,
Aye.
Mr. Warner.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to the agenda of our regular meeting. I'd like to open with a statement of our vision and mission. Our vision is working together with our community. We inspire our students to discover their talents and rise to their greatest potential. Our mission is building on the strengths of our diverse community. We create an engaging, comprehensive educational environment that supports the growth of lifelong learners. At this point, we're going to insert into the agenda public comment as related only to the agenda items. There will be an additional time for public comment at the end, not related to agenda items. Everything I have right now is not related to the agenda, so if you do have a comment related to the consent agenda, the new business, grants, personnel, now is the time to come to the podium. Okay, seeing no one, we need to move on to our consent agenda. Do we have a motion to accept?
I move to accept our consent agenda.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented, and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Berger,
Aye.
Mrs. LaBella,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian,
Aye.
Mrs. Lohr,
Aye.
Miss Lauer, Mr. Skelton,
Aye.
Mr. Warner.
Aye.
All right, moving on to new business, I'd like to invite Mr. Cox to the podium to present on the personnel report.
President Lohr, Dr. Palatevich, members of the Board of Trustees. Administration seeks approval of the personnel and professional leave report as presented this evening.
I'd like to move to accept the personnel report and professional leave request.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or questions for Mr. Cox? Okay, seeing none, could I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Berger,
Aye.
Mrs. LaBella,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian,
Aye.
Mrs. Lohr,
Aye.
Miss Lauer, Mr. Skelton,
Aye.
Mr. Warner.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Up next, we have Dr. Stacy Mason to present a grant. We'll separate these into two votes, everyone. Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Balatevich, President Lohr, members of the board. I request your approval tonight of the Urban College Acceleration Network Grant, also called UCAN for short. This grant is a new partnership between Urban Indiana Schools with the mission of increasing access to post-secondary courses through the early college high school program. UCAN connects established early college programs with new up-and-coming urban schools who are starting early college programs. The model establishes the early college high schools as mentors for their partner schools, providing the partner schools with guidance and support as they work to accelerate their path toward becoming an early college high school. Through UCAN, partner schools will have access to coaching, support for the early college coursework, along with educational professional development at no cost. Terre Haute North and Terre Haute South are partner schools under the UCAN grant. Terre Haute South's mentor school is Muncie Central, and Terre Haute North's mentor school is Ben Davis. The grant from the IDOE pays to support teacher credentialing, professional development, and other early college experiences. The Early College High School program is led by Indianapolis Center of Excellence in Leadership and Learning, also known as CEL. You've probably heard of CEL. They help build the model that empowers students to earn post-secondary credits while they're in high school, so college credit alongside their high school diploma. The goal of early college is for students to earn 30 college credits and/or a workforce credential prior to graduating high school. CEL provides the professional development and operational support to the UCAN schools across the state. The grant will provide $140,000 to each Terre Haute North and Terre Haute South and runs through November 30th of 2024. And I will entertain any questions about the grant.
We need a motion and a second before we can do that. Do I have a motion to accept the grant?
I will move to accept the Urban College Acceleration Grant.
I second it.
Motion and a second. Any questions for Dr. Mason?
Have we received this award before, grant before?
We have not. This is the the newest opportunity for us to participate in the program. So we're really excited about the opportunity for teacher credentialing and to really increase the number of dual college credits our students can earn.
Good job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're excited.
It is exciting because that's something that a lot of schools are struggling to be ahead of the curve to preserve their dual credit because of the way higher education accrediting has come down. So kudos for.
Thank you. And I would like to mention West Vigo High School is also participating in the early college high school experience. They unfortunately just aren't eligible for this grant because they are not considered urban. And so therefore, they are not eligible for this particular grant, but they are participating as well.
Is there a rural grant that would cover West Vigo?
There has been a rural grant in the past, and so we'll be keeping our eyes open for that opportunity as it comes along.
Any other questions or discussion? Could I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Berger?
Aye.
Mrs. LaBella?
Aye.
Mrs. Killian?
Aye.
Mrs. Lohr?
Aye.
Mrs. Lauer? Mr. Skelton?
Aye.
Mr. Warner?
Aye.
Next, Dr. Goler to present.
Good evening, Dr. Balatevich, President Lohr, and members of the board. This evening, we bring you a second grant, the Title IV Part A grant for the fiscal year 2022. This is a grant that originates as a federal funding source, comes down to us through the Indiana Department of Education. We are eligible for this grant each year pending our enrollment. We are provided with funds on a per pupil enrollment basis. Also, the non-public schools in our area, such as St. Pat's and Gibault, are eligible to participate alongside us, and we are the administrating body for those schools as well. This grant is in the amount of $302,877.81. It will run through September 30th of 2024. This grant comes to us again from the federal source through the Every Student Succeeds Act. It has 3 focus areas that the grant is divided into. The first one is Part A, a STEM focus for a well-rounded education. We look at professional development with Rose Hallman in this way. We have summer workshops on advanced science topics. Dr. Lieberman and Dee Gosnell work with teachers to provide some excellent topics in the month of June. We also purchase teacher materials through this grant. The grant also supports the Summer Math Magic and Reading Writing Wonders program with some literacy and math materials. Also, we have a Part B in this grant for safe and healthy schools. This is our Student Services Department. We support our counselors with things like the Red Ribbon Campaign, College and Career Boot Camp, and at-risk health programs. We also support technology integration with this grant through a Part C. Our teachers have been afforded opportunities to learn more about Canvas as well as Google applications and student engagement kinds of classroom strategies. So we request your approval this evening for this Title IV Part A grant.
I would like to make a motion to approve the Title IV Part A grant.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any questions for Dr. Goller or discussion? Are we always partner with St. Pat's and Gibault on this?
We have for the last several years, yes.
Okay.
I would just like to thank you, Dr. Goller, and your team with the grants that you always keep us funded and moving forward, and I appreciate that so much.
Thank you. With a lot of people that help out on this one, especially because it's the 3 focus areas. So a lot of folks are involved, and we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor to approve the grant. I'm going to ad-lib until Dr. Goller gets back to her seat so that we can have a roll call, please.
We're ready. Okay, Mr. Berger,
Aye.
Mrs. LaBella,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian,
Aye.
Mrs. Lohr,
Aye.
Miss Lauer, Mr. Skelton,
Aye.
Mr. Warner.
Aye.
Thank you. We're going to move on now to the next portion of our agenda. And before we do that, I just want to make one point of information here. We had previously announced a second executive session for the board this evening. We have decided to make that public. So after the adjournment of this regular business meeting, we will be welcoming one of the consultants that we are going to be interviewing to kickstart the superintendent search. And if any of you would like to stay to see that, you are more than welcome to do that. So at this time, we have a call for comments, for public comments. I have several here. I'll call you by name. Again, I just want you to remember there's 3 minutes, and you'll get a 30-second call. Who is my timer tonight?
Would you like me to do it, and Mr. Berger can do it from now on? Or Rick, are you prepared to do that?
I'll let you go ahead and do it tonight.
All right. First on my list, I have Grace Clay. Sure, we'll put you on the back. How about that? Okay. I think the name here is Erin June. Okay. Angela Tanner.
It's been 28 days since Dr. Hayworth went on the news and promised this community that the school corporation's actions would speak loudly. He stated that, and I quote, "We can't just say we are against those actions. We've got to demonstrate that we won't tolerate these actions." I realize Dr. Hayworth is now gone, but that doesn't change what this community was promised. I work at an institute of higher education, and I'm fully aware that FERPA does not allow you to release student information. Frankly, it's irrelevant, as anyone close to this already knows the names of all those involved. But I am reminding our new board members that you all talked about the need for transparency and rebuilding trust in this community. What we need now are statements from this administration and board that are loud and clear on the expulsions, their appeal feels and where they stand. We need to see the firing of the staff and administration who were complicit while these hate crimes were being committed. We need to see a change in administrative leadership at West Vigo High School to show this community the fact that you will not tolerate the brushing under the rug of hate crimes, which is what was done for over a year there. We need to see discipline policy rewritten to include hate crimes, because that is what this was. We need explicit guidelines for what should happen when a student commits a hate crime. I highly encourage all of these things be done with the exclusion of any administrative personnel or board member who has family involved in this crime. I have heard repeatedly people try to justify these students' actions and their consequences of these actions by stating that they're only 14 to 17-year-old boys. This could ruin their lives. Frankly, that's an ignorant statement. It won't ruin their life. It will definitely change their life. And it should, because anything less than that tells them
30
it's okay to
seconds.
commit a hate crime. At any age, there should be repercussions. What you should be doing instead is asking yourself how their behavior is currently affecting those students who they committed these crimes against. They are the same age. Where are the questions about how those students are coping right now? Where are the questions about where are they at in their mental health right now, because they're not in a good place? You should be asking how will they be able to forge ahead after enduring this, and
That's
what,
time.
if anything, we can do to help them achieve that.
Thank you. Next, I have Peggy Joyner.
Hello. She said it all. She said everything I was going to say. At this point, I don't have a bunch of comments, but I do have a bunch of questions, and I'm assuming I wouldn't be able to get those questions answered tonight, correct?
We have your contact information, so that's how we usually follow up when questions are presented to us in this forum.
Okay. And you're in the interim. What doctor? How do you say your?
Balatevich.
Okay. And before you started working for the school corporation, what did you do?
I don't believe this is an interview.
No, I'm trying to get to know you. You are over the school corporation. I believe I have a right to know
Yeah.
what capacity
It's-
you worked in before you worked here.
That's all on the website. He was in charge of student services, so if you go ahead with your comments. Thank you.
Were you the principal at West Vigo previously, before you worked?
I
for this?
was.
Thank you. That's all you had to say.
Yep.
Just a bunch of questions. Like she said, if you're close to the situation, we know the names. And I believe Reverend Clark asked y'all to put some teeth in your policies and disciplinary actions. So we know that wasn't done because some of the accused were playing basketball at the Wabash Valley Classic. So no teeth there. I'm not really, I just hope that the same energy is kept if my son does something. Or someone else of color, because we don't have a father on the school board. We don't play golf, our parents don't play golf with the judges, so we're just gonna need that same energy. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to make a comment before we move forward to not make personal comments about the personnel or the board members who are sitting here. If you could just restrict that to be professional. Next, we have Mary Howard Hamilton, please.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Mary Howard Hamilton, and I just have a brief comment regarding the incidents of anti-Black racism that surfaced at West Vigo High School, as well as a few recommendations for the board, as well as for Mr. McClendon and for Dr. Balachevitz. I would hope that these recommendations could be possibly implemented as quickly as possible. But first of all, the racial issues that must be addressed are systemic. And even though the perpetrators of the hate crimes have been punished, those individuals are just the tip of the iceberg, as was just mentioned. The larger systemic issues, or the larger mass of the iceberg, lie below the surface, and they are the teachers, the administrators, coaches, students, as well as the parents and guardians of the students at West Vigo High School. This large mass is hiding and must be brought to the surface so that no further traumatic emotional damage can be inflicted on innocent minoritized scholars whose academic journey was thwarted and stopped and disrupted. Thus, they had to change schools. This mass also disrupts the learning and moral growth and development of everyone in the environment, not just the minoritized students, but everyone, all students. All students are hurt by these behaviors. Board members, President Lohr, Mr. McClendon in particular, since he's the DEI person, as well as Dr. Balachevitz, it is time for courageous action. It's time for courageous action and leadership to fight racism and anti-Black racism in the school system. Based on my experience as a diversity researcher and consultant, I recommend the following steps. Develop and implement a strategic anti-racism plan. And if all one has already been implemented, Mr. McClendon, please share and have that presented to the board as well as to the schools as quickly as possible. Also, if a plan such as this already exists, review it again and implement it quickly. Provide continuous and ongoing anti-racism training for all Vigo County School Board members and all teachers and educators in the school system.
30 seconds.
Thank you. Provide continuous updates on diversity initiatives at the school board. Facilitate a town hall meeting at West Vigo immediately, because you must address all the parents, the teachers, the administrators at the school about hate crime, civility, and moral responsibility, specifically for Mr. McClendon, since this is his area. Superintendent candidates should have a question regarding diversity and how they have spoken about diversity initiatives in the past. One last recommendation: if these things aren't done, I suggest that there be a review of job effectiveness for everyone, to review their position and goals and whether or not they've met those positions. There's a saying that when the wrench is on the nut, tighten it. You all are the wrench. Racism is the nut, metaphorically and rhetorically. It's the nut. Tighten it up, because this is going to continue to happen if you don't. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I have Reverend Terry Clark.
Dr. Balachevitz and members of the board, surely what happens at one school can most certainly happen at another. And the thing is, critiques are incomplete without correctives. When we came a month ago and these issues were addressed, of course what we asked for was accountability from the students who perpetrated these actions and those higher ups who let it go, didn't do anything about it, and let it continue. Well, we've heard within that last month that students were disciplined, but that's the easy part. But those who had authority over those students, as of today, we haven't heard of anything that's happened to them. All that's been asked for has been simple accountability, starting with the students on up to those who knew about it, let it go on, and nothing happened. So I believe that everybody in this room, of course, would be opposed to any students bullying other students. And basically, the right call would be made to discipline those students, discipline teachers, staffs, and whoever else. This is way beyond bullying, way beyond bullying. And like I said before, what happens at one school can surely happen at another. And so basically, Yes, we've asked not only, we've made critiques, but we're still asking for correctives. So primarily, accountability needs to be done primarily to those who had authority over those students, because what those kids did wasn't done in a corner. People knew about it, did nothing about it, let it go on. And so now, since we're in the posture that nobody's answering questions, that's why these groups still come and ask these questions and so on and so forth. So again, to take action against students bullying students and others, that's the right call. All we're asking in this new year is, when it comes to this, holding people accountable, particularly faculty, staff, and whoever, board, all we're asking is one thing: make the right call. Okay, thank you.
Next I have Heather Hindle.
Good evening. I just wanted to present some historical context for some of the things that we're experiencing right now that we're wanting to address. The conversation about anti-Black hate crimes at West Vigo School has largely focused on the individual behavior of white students. However, white supremacy is a systemic issue that is deeply embedded in our community's history, and it has never gone away. According to Dalton Gackle at the Indiana Historical Society in 2017, the KKK in Indiana had the largest membership of any state by 1922, and by 1925, it was estimated 30% of all white men in Indiana were members of the Klan, including approximately half of the General Assembly and the governor. According to Leonard Moore's book, Citizen Klansmen, the officers of Terre Haute Klan No. 7 presided over an organization that was enormous by community standards, with more than 7,000 members. In 1925, almost 1/3 of all Native white men in Vigo County, and bolstered by separate associations for women and children. The Klan became by far the largest community organization in the city of 68,000 people. The size of the Terre Haute Klan has geographical significance because Terre Haute is also the home to the Lost Creek Settlement, one of the earliest free Black settlements in the state of Indiana, founded in the 1820s. Black and white Haitians recall active cross burnings in West Terre Haute as recently as the 1990s. On July 20th, 2006, 4 white teens scorched the letters KKK on the lawn of a Black couple in North Terre Haute. West Terre Haute is still considered by many people of color and some white people to be a sundown town. We need to confront that history and understand the insidiousness of white supremacy in order to hold ourselves accountable and allow for the healing and liberation for all of us. And I'm a Hoosier. My mom moved here at 10. My dad's ancestors moved to Sullivan County after having served in the Revolutionary War. So my family is eyebrows deep all in this. I don't know specifically about things, but I know what the kinds of things that I heard growing up. And this doesn't go away on its own. We have to, as white people, most of us in leadership here are white or white passing, and we have the obligation. It wasn't Black people that created this system. It was white people. It's our job to take it apart. And I remember as a child hearing the adults around me. I'm 52, so it's been a while, but within recent history, hearing adults talking about moving to West Terre Haute so their children wouldn't have to go to an integrated school. And that I remember it, so I'm not the only one. And I want us to work on this as a community, and I appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I have Jordan Trachtenberg. Hope I said that correctly.
To follow up with what Heather Hindle described as the systemic issues of white supremacy, here are some examples of white supremacy that are considered socially unacceptable to most white people. The lynching of George Ward over the Wabash River Bridge in 1901. Blackface. Using the N-word and other racial slurs. Swastikas and Confederate flags. Neo-Nazis. The Ku Klux Klan. Comments to people of color like "go back to where you came from" or "you should be deported." Book burning and preventing racism from being taught in schools. Here are just a few examples of white supremacy that are considered socially acceptable to most white people. Intertwining Christianity and patriotism, an ideological hallmark of the KKK. Choosing to hold school board meetings in a historic sundown town like West Terre Haute. White women praising the principal for not having a racist bone in his body while using an ML King quote to play victims of reverse racism. This is an example of racial gaslighting and cultural appropriation. A newly elected school board member using his political power to intimidate victims' family members and get his expelled and suspended children into another school district. A newly elected school board member claiming that lawn jockeys aren't racist. This is an example of white-splaining racism or racial gaslighting. A white basketball coach allowing his white son to play in the Wabash Valley Classic and the Riverton Park Games after receiving an in-school suspension for anti-black racism. Telling people of color that they need to use the appropriate channels and appropriate language to voice their concerns about racism if they ever want white people to listen and change. This is an example of tone policing or conforming to respectability politics. Back the blue, Blue Lives Matter, and thin blue line flags. White supremacist groups like Constitutional Sheriffs, Oath Keepers, 3%ers, Patriot Front, and the Proud Boys. Police brutality and mass incarceration of people of color. Holding the white students accountable for white supremacist violence is the first step in accountability, but certainly not even close to what we need to heal from this history of violence in our community. We must call out white
30
supremacy
seconds.
in all its forms and work together to abolish it.
I have Grace Clay.
We came to the last school board meeting to address our outrage about the racist targeting and abuse by West Vigo students and athletes of Black and brown students. We have followed the school corporation's actions closely because Superintendent Hayworth told us we would see by your actions you take this serious. We were told first the students would be dealt with and then the school corporation would deal with the adults. That absolutely failed these Black and brown students. You expelled and suspended some students, but it seems you forgot one part, the adults. Children do not become racist in a vacuum. They learn racism from their environment, and it is up to the adults, the parents, educators, and coaches and community to teach them the history of that ignorance in this country and in this very community, and actively deconstruct it in themselves and teach anti-racism to their children. Some of you have loudly failed. You have created a culture where some of your children believe they can be flagrantly racist and even violent with impunity. These teenagers felt not only they would get away with what they did, but felt emboldened by the adults around them. Many holding positions of power in the community. One athlete wielded his bigotry and misogyny against Black students, LGBTQ students, and young girls, bragging, "Go ahead and report me. My father is a cop. He will just call the principal." We have parents claiming these boys don't have fully developed brains yet. I know 5-year-olds who understand what racism is and why it is abhorrent. The adults around them explicitly taught them better. 2 parents of these expelled boys have contacted the parent of these Black children who had to move schools to avoid racist abuse to try and appeal to the impact on their children. one having the audacity to even go to her place of work. Stop harassing this woman or her family. They have been through enough. Asking the victims of racism to consider the impact of consequences to those that abuse them is grotesque and audacious. It is quite convenient to expel students and give a pass to the adults who fostered this, who turned a blind eye, who protected those perpetuating this racist abuse. These abuses were reported to a coach and to a principal who did nothing to protect black students. Acting now to save their jobs does not absolve them. Black and brown children are not safe at West Vigo High until you stop with this complicity and get a spine behind you.
The last name I have is Erin June.
It's Erin Young. Thanks. Sorry. I'm not from Indiana. I wanted to respect other people more impacted by the situation to allow them to actually speak to things. But as somebody that's walking into this situation and hearing the stories of what goes on in this town and seeing the other things outside, like the racism is so blatant and so sickening that I don't understand how, it's ridiculous, the lack of response, especially from the adults and people in power. And I mean, this would not fly in Chicago, I can tell you that. It would not fly in so many places, and maybe y'all don't understand because you've been living in this small town and this has been okay, and racism has been okay to you for a long time, but it's gotta stop. Like, y'all gotta fix your S-H-I-T. And thinking about, I mean, I'm just walking in too, and maybe I'm wrong, but my understanding is the entire school board is white. How are y'all gonna make choices and decisions about how this situation affects the students of color and how to deal with racism in the first place if it's all white people making the choices? That's pretty obvious to me. I think the most obvious thing would be to have trainings about racism 101 and simple stuff that, so that you can recognize that when something so violent and so sick happens in your schools, that you step in and do something right away. And you listen to the people that come here, all the people, respect for all of what you were saying, and actually do something about the situation, not something small, something huge, and to go at that more and more and more to dig to the root of it. That's it.
That concludes everyone who signed up for public comment. At this time, I'd like to invite Dr. Balatevich to the podium for a statement.
Good evening. President Lohr, members of the School Board of Trustees, and greater school community. Before I begin, I want to apologize to Ms. Joyner. I apologize for my sharp tongue. I really do, and I regret that. Tonight, I'd like to address the recent issues at West Vigo High School and the decisive action the school corporation is taking in response. I met with the students that were affected by the racial discord at West Vigo, and their parents were present. I apologize to them on behalf of the school corporation. I express my sorrow for the behaviors that they had to experience over the past several years, and relayed that racism cannot and will not be tolerated in the Vigo County School Corporation. I applauded the courage the students displayed to come forward and bring these issues to light. As you know, in November, the school corporation launched an investigation immediately upon learning of the allegations of racial harassment. Outside investigators conducted a thorough examination culminating in a report that revealed racist actions perpetrated by a small group of students at West Vigo High School toward African American students. These actions included students using racist words and terms, racist pictures and videos, and racist actions toward African American students. The report also demonstrated students reporting these issues to certain staff who did not take appropriate action. At some point, students stopped reporting issues because they felt that there was a chilling effect that caused inaction by the staff. Trust is the cornerstone that our schoolhouse rests upon. Trust is not bought. Trust is not given freely. Trust is earned and can easily be lost. Parents trust that while at school, their children will not be exposed to racism, and that they trust that if their child does encounter racism, it will be dealt with swiftly and appropriately. I apologize to the greater community because that trust has been compromised. We will need to work hard to rebuild that trust. As a result of this exhaustive and unprecedented investigation by a team of legal experts, we have disciplined numerous students, including suspensions and recommendations for expulsion for behaviors inconsistent with those expected by students of the Vigo County School Corporation. We hired an independent hearing officer to judge those expulsion requests. In addition, we are administering disciplinary action for current staff members that did not act responsibly or appropriately. Only by holding those responsible can we begin to rebuild this trust. To regain trust, we need to bring awareness and change. We must be sure that we monitor our progress and that we are transparent with our data. I would like to share with you some changes that will be put in place immediately to help regain the community's trust. First, recommendations for West Vigo High School. Training. School-wide training for all staff, including lay coaches, will focus on the responsibility of the individual to report issues of harassment, bullying, hazing, and racial issues. Specifically, this training must focus on moving away from the Lone Ranger approach. This approach was endemic with this entire saga. Issues that were reported by students to adults never made it to the school administration. This lack of reporting created a chilling effect for students wanting to report allegations. Training will specifically target this practice. When a student reports an issue regarding harassment, that report must be reported to the school administration. School response. The training will also address the school response when allegations are substantiated. Evidently, the favored approach among staff and coaches is to address all issues of this nature primarily through conversation with students, followed by a warning not to engage in the behavior again, or else there will be consequences. As a result of no discipline being issued, there has been a feeling among some that nothing ever gets addressed that actually snuffs out the incidents. The training will develop safeguards that substantiated discipline allegations will be documented and discipline will be issued. Diversity programming. The Director of Diversity and Inclusion will facilitate a program for all students and staff at West Vigo High School that will include education in racial harassment, language, bullying, and related topics. A more intensive program will be created for the football team, where most of these issues originated. During training with staff, the expectation will be communicated, outlining stringent consequences for any staff member implicated in problematic behavior or language. District-wide changes, a task force, I think as so eloquently pointed out. The Vigo County School Corporation will create a task force that will create a corporation-wide plan to address issues revolving around race. The committee will have co-chairs, including the Director of Diversity and Inclusion and community members outside the school corporation. Data presentation. During the first board meeting in June, the superintendent will publicly share discipline-related statistics relative to expulsions, suspensions, arrest, and alternative placements, disaggregated by race, economic status, and special education. Areas of disproportionality will be highlighted. Student reporting. The school corporation will highlight procedures for all students to report issues regarding harassment or bullying, such as Stop It or our bully reporting form. We are hopeful that these strategies can make progress and regain the trust of our community. The other day, a community member who is concerned about these issues said, "It will probably be a good thing to close this sad chapter for our school corporation." At first, I agreed. But after I thought about those remarks, I believe that closing the chapter is the problem. The school corporation needs to keep this chapter open. We need to read this chapter over and over again so we can continue to reinforce these important lessons. I would like to touch on one more important point. I have been given a few examples of West Vigo students being harassed in public merely for wearing a letter jacket or school colors. I find this harassment to be unacceptable and does not aid or does not add to the needed dialogue to move our community forward. More importantly, for any adult to attack any child is beyond comprehension. West Vigo students need love and understanding at this time, not hate. I urge the entire community to assist in the healing by demonstrating compassion for our students and staff on the west side. Finally, I would like to thank our community for exercising patience and understanding as the school corporation conducted this investigation. Due to affording students and staff full due process rights, this has caused the situation to last longer than anticipated. You demonstrated a tremendous amount of confidence in those who assisted with this investigation. Now we need your help to bring meaningful change for our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Balatevich. At this time, we have an opportunity for school board members to make comments if they would like.
Well, I have a few comments, being one of the new ones on the board here. Have 8 bullet points here. First of all, thank you, community, for being here tonight. Thank you. Seems like a lot of school board meetings, we don't have anyone show up. I served 8 years on the Lafayette School Corporation, and I'd encourage you to keep coming to meetings and work with us, educate each other. I look forward to serving in this position. A lot of people ask me why. I love this community. I'm proud to represent the 13,000 students that we have, 2,200 employees, and you put the trust of us 7 members of the trustees here with a $168 million budget. We have many good employees in this school corporation, and they work hard every day for students. And I think sometimes we don't say thank you enough to those people, our staff, everybody, all of our employees. The leadership team behind me here, I'm proud of this team that works hard every day with their teams. Education is the foundation of any community. And I know that by working at a company that looks for that workforce that we need for tomorrow. I look forward to working with the 6 other trustees here and the leadership staff. Do we have challenges, folks? We've got challenges. We've got challenges. I feel like we'll address these challenges and make this school corporation a school of choice. My ask to this community is to work together. All of us, it takes a village of people for the betterment of this school and this community. I hear your concerns, but we are doing so many good things too. And I think all these issues are important. The next few years will establish what this school corporation will be in the next 30 or 40 years. Think that through. We're making some critical decisions and good decisions, I feel like, out in front of us. But I go right back to you as a community. We need to work together. You need to give us a chance to work with you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any comments? Okay, we don't have any committee reports at this time since we just formed our committees, so I will just move on to say that our next meeting will be Monday, January 23rd, 2023, 6 p.m. here in the Conference Center. At this time, I would take a motion for adjournment with the note that we will continue maybe in about 5 minutes after those who've decided to leave have done so with our presentation for our superintendent search. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
Could I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Berger?
Yes.
Mrs. LaBella?
Aye.
Ms. Killian?
Aye.
Ms. Lohr?
Aye.
Ms. Lauer? Mr. Skelton?
Aye.
Mr. Warner?
Aye.
We're adjourned. everyone hear me? We're going to try and get started with our superintendent presentation here in about 2 minutes. So if you have conversations and you don't want to stay, please take them out in the hallway. Thank you very much. We could have board members take their seats at this time. Oh, okay.
Guys, we're gonna start.
Let's everybody take our seats and we're going to get started. We are live streaming, so. All right. I don't have an introduction for you, sir, so I'm just going to say, take it away. We are yours to listen.
Thank you, Amy. I'm Terry McDaniel. I'm the Indiana State representative of the University Search Team. The University Search Team is a team that was put together.
Could you speak into the microphone
Yeah,
so our online folks can hear?
Sure.
Thank you.
University Search Team was a group that was put together back in the 1960s. In 1960, Indiana established what's called the Reconsolidation Act, which took over 700 school districts, and now we have only 291. The idea of the search team at that time was the 4 universities, Purdue, IU, Ball State, and ISU, all decided to go together and give time of a professor in educational administration to help districts find superintendents. Of course, back in those days, most districts were townships or city districts, and they really didn't have a good way of looking at candidates outside. So we've been in business for over 60 years, in doing this, and I'm going to present to you tonight a little bit about what we do and how we do it. I will tell you, first of all, that our 4 members do represent the 4 state-funded universities. Each of us have been superintendents. I spent 28 years at Spencer-Rowan Community Schools, 9 as superintendent there. My other colleagues have been superintendents. We're all either present or former professors in educational administration, which means we've trained most of the people that come through to be superintendents in the state of Indiana. There's only 6 training programs for the EDS degree that's required to be a superintendent, and we represent the big 4. The other 2 being the Indiana Wesleyan and Oakland City, which offers a doctorate degree as well. What we do is when we come in to work with the school board, we would initially set up a meeting with you that would last somewhere around an hour and a half. During that meeting, what we would do is we would begin to guide you toward building an application. In the packet that I put before you is probably the same packet that was shared with you earlier digitally by Stacy, but I wanted to put that in front of you tonight, so if you wanted to look at anything in there and ask questions, you could. We would come into that meeting, usually it would be me or me and one other team member at that point, and we would begin by talking about building a timeline. Now in Indiana, it takes a while to hire a superintendent, and you're at the beginning stages of this, and it's really important that you get started as soon as you can. Because by the time you start and build an application, get the position advertised for 4 to 6 weeks, spend 3 or 4 weeks interviewing and narrowing down a candidate to a contract, it still takes 17 more days to hire a superintendent by state statute. So you're looking at anywhere from 3 to 4 months from the day you start to the day you can actually have a name behind the person you want to be superintendent. So our first aspect is to build that timeline, and there's a page in the booklet that you have that would show you how we build that and what each part is. Starting with building the application, building an advertisement, advertising the position, setting up interviews, and then going through the process of negotiating a contract, having a public hearing on the contract, and actually hiring your superintendent. The next thing we do, and there's a sample in your packet, is we help you build an application. Now the application that's in your packet is basically a template of what we've been using for, probably the last 10 years. We've revised it once or twice during those years, but it's basically the format that we offer. Most of it's boilerplate, name and position you had, the salary you earned, the benefits you had, your experiences and all that. But there's 2 important pieces on there that we ask you to build for us. One is questions. And so what we ask you to do, and if I come back, I would give you sample questions other boards have used. I would ask you to pick from those questions or make up your own to put on the application. Now, you're going to interview, so you'll be able to ask all the questions you want in interviews. But the idea of putting questions on the application for your candidates to write in their responses shows their writing abilities and their ability to communicate in writing. And that's very, very important. You don't want a superintendent candidate who can't spell, can't use proper grammar, or can't get their point across when they're writing something. So this is a great way to see that. The second part is a section where we talk about what we call attributes, the qualifications that you want in your next superintendent. And again, we'll give you samples of those. But we want you to list the things that are most critical to you in terms of being superintendent in Vigo County. Diversity might be an issue that you put on there, or awareness of the community, or being open, or being visible, or being transparent. Those things can be put on that application, so when the applicant opens that application and sees those, they can respond to the things that you want them to do. The third piece we can do with you in that night meeting or evening meeting or whenever of an hour and a half is we can help you build a survey. And listening tonight to the concerns of the community about the recent incident you've had, it's a great opportunity to get input from the community. In here is a sample survey that we've used many, many times. Most boards don't use this entire survey. They limit it to certain parts, but you can use any or all of this. You can add or subtract from it. You can change how the answers are given. For instance, you could say pick the top 3 in a category or the top 2 or whatever you want to do. We will build that survey for you. And what we will do is we'll not only build that survey for you, but we will give you a URL address where then you can post that through your school communication system to all your parents, put it in the media, to the Star Tribune with Sue Laughlin, announce it publicly at meetings. Wherever you want to put that URL out, people can then respond to that survey. And the way we set it up is so you don't get someone trying to overload the survey. One survey per instrument. So if you take it on your home computer, you can't take it on that home computer again. And people say, well, I have 4 or 5 members in my family that want to take this. Well, probably everybody at least has an iPhone these days or some similar instrument, an iPad or whatever, and you can take it on those as well. In the end, we tabulate these for you. We put a disqualifier in the front of it saying that you will not have access to any names or any individuals that respond to this. The survey is collected by us. It'll actually have my name on it if I lead this search and you select us. We will tabulate those results, and we can break that down in terms of demographics. For instance, we can say, identify yourself as a parent, a teacher, an elementary parent, a secondary parent, a middle school parent, a community member, a teacher, a support staff member, administrator. You can pick any or all of these, and then when we report back to you, we'll give you an overall report, but we'll give you a breakdown of each one of those demographic units. So you can see what your elementary parents think, or what your middle school parents think, or what the community thinks. This is great because that gives you a tool then when you actually begin interviewing to focus your questions based on things that they have said, or when you're actually making that selection to look back and see what the community really values in your next superintendent candidate that you would want these candidates to possess. It's a great tool, and almost every district we work with anymore uses a survey. You can do other things too. You can have the community outreaches, the public sessions where people come in and speak. But we recommend a survey because that gives everybody an equal voice. When you have a public forum, you know what happens, kind of like tonight. Some people will step forward and speak. Others are afraid to say what they want to say, even though they want to so bad, you know. So it's a good tool to use. Now, the other thing we do is we post this application. We usually post it in 3 places. We post it with the School Board Association, we post it with the Superintendent's Association, and we post it on the DOE Job Bank. We can post it other places. For instance, one thought you might have is, why don't we post it with Illinois? Well, we could do that as well, but what we've found through our practice is anybody looking for a superintendent's job in Indiana, the first place they go is a DOE Job Bank. Has a new name now, but I still call it the Job Bank. Anyone that wants a job looks there. And I can verify that by the searches we've done over time where we have actually had candidates who actually landed positions as superintendents from places like South Dakota, North Dakota, Louisiana, Missouri, and of course the surrounding states as well. So people who are interested in the Vigo County job will find that posting on the DOE Job Bank and they will apply there. We collect the applications for you. Now, I have school boards say to me, we want to see those applications. We want them sent to us. Quite honestly, I'm telling you, you probably do not. Because if they come to you, then, and you know these names ahead of time, then people start immediately asking you questions. Well, did Tom apply? Well, did Karen apply? Well, did the superintendent in Clay County apply? Did my neighbor next door apply? You do not need to be bombarded with those questions. You can simply say the search team is collecting those applications and we will not see those names until we officially meet with them. Posting, as I said, is usually 4 to 6 weeks. Some school boards say, can we post it longer? Here's what happens. There'll be 2 or 3 applications that will come the first week, and then nothing will come until that last week, and then all the rest of the people apply that last week. Nothing happens in between. Doesn't matter if you post it 4 weeks or 9 weeks, that's the way the applications typically come in, with very few exceptions. So we'll collect those applications for you. Now, a couple things I want to point out at this point. People are very aware of what's going on in Vigo County, let alone the incident that you've been talking about tonight, but they're well aware of your referendum that failed. They're well aware of what happened with Rob in the past. They're well aware of what happened in Meadows Elementary. You know, they're very attuned to that. I've had a couple people already talk to me thinking we might be doing your search about the position, concerned about some of the tasks that you face that may affect the number of applications that you get. It may also attract some people who want to come in and be fixers, try to help this corporation turn around, find a big challenge and be willing to accept it. The other bad news is, for some reason over the past 4 or 5 years, and I think we know the reasons as a search team, is we're seeing less and less people apply for the superintendency. And you ask why? Well, the reasons we see is no one wants to take that responsibility. Not only here in Vigo County, but across Indiana and across the country, we have seen in the past couple years how schools have been attacked through the media, how Purple for Parents and other issues have come before the school corporation to make it very difficult. And the availability of having a long-term superintendency is pretty difficult. You just saw your superintendent go through a short tenure. Average tenure in Indiana is 3.5 years for a superintendent. Very, very short. There's a lot of candidates that say, I don't want to risk pulling up my family, selling my home, moving to a new community, and knowing I may only have 3 years if you give them a 3-year contract. And you can give 1, 2, or 3 years, but our search team will tell all applicants, if you don't get a 3-year contract, don't take the job, because you need at least that much of a guarantee. So what we're seeing is about half the number of applicants we've had in the past. A couple years ago, we did Greenwood, Kokomo, and Westfield, Washington, all in one short time frame. We had 22 applicants for each one of those jobs. A year later, we did Noblesville, another prestigious quote-unquote school corporation. We had 11. Good applicants. The pool was strong, and that's kind of what we're seeing now. We've done searches with 4 and 5 applicants. I have one Wednesday night, 5 applicants for a job. They're good candidates, but the pool's become very, very small. Makes it easy and it makes it hard for you as a school board. Once we collect those applications, then we schedule basically a 4.5 to 5 hour meeting. That's typically how long it takes. During that 4.5 to 5 hour meeting, we'll sit down with you as a board and all 4 of our team members, and we will begin a discussion with you that will begin with introductions, and then we'll begin to ask you, tell us all the strengths of Vigo County School Corporation. Now, by this time, I've already called all the applicants, or they've called me, so I'm aware of all of them, and I've done my homework. I've shared that list with my colleagues. They've done their homework. We know these candidates because they come from our 4 universities almost every time. So we're well aware of the candidates coming in. But by this asking you the strengths of Vigo County, and then we follow that up with what are the challenges, that gives us some final information to go do a final vetting with the candidates. So we'll go around to you as school board members. We'll say, tell us the strengths. When we finish that, we'll say, tell us the challenges. And you've named a few here tonight. We've named a few here tonight. Then we'll say to you as school board members, tell us 2 personal characteristics and or professional skills each of you believe the next superintendent must have for the job. And we'll write those down. Now, obviously with 7 school board members, if you have 14 personal characteristics and professional skills that you feel are must-have, probably it's either Superman or God's the only one going to qualify for that position. But we'll match up as many as we can at that point. What we'll do then is, after we do that, is we'll split. We'll give you a responsibility of going in staying in the room and selecting dates for your next interviews and 2 questions per each board member for your first round of interviews. We'll give you samples in a packet that day of questions that you can use in different categories. You're welcome to use those, derivatives, or make up your own. Your other task will be set your calendar. Find dates that you can have executive sessions. We'll guide you and say, don't plan on any more than 2 on a weeknight or 3 on a Saturday, because we're going to recommend a 90-minute interview process with 3 parts, which we'll explain that day as well. And if you have 2 90-minute interviews on a weeknight, plus 15 or 30 minutes in between, that's 3.5 hours. Your brain's pretty fried by then, trust me. And 3 on a Saturday, by the time you get down with 3, you're going, what did that first one say? So you want to take very careful notes in doing that. We will go in another room at that time, and we will do a final vetting of the candidates. We'll look at all the information you've told us that day based on everything we already know about candidates. And our job at that point is to bring you back a list of candidates that we feel like meet your qualifications for superintendent. We never tell you who to hire. The most important job you have as school board members is hiring your next superintendent. That's not our job, that's yours. We don't know your community, you do. We don't know what you need as much as you know what you need. We only recommend. We'll tell you the candidates that we recommend, we'll tell you why, and then we'll go through the candidates that we don't recommend you interview, and we'll tell you why we're not recommending those candidates as well. In the end, you get all the applications, so you can accept our recommendations, or you can change things around if you feel like it. But most school corporations, once they go through that, they pretty well feel like our recommendations are solid. We've had a lot of success over the years. We're not done at that point. After that, we walk you through a process of how to best conduct your first round of interviews. And so we'll go through a whole list of things that you should consider and do during that first round of interviews. Then we'll talk about bringing back the candidates that you most consider to be the best candidates, 2 or 3, and how you handle the second round of interviews. And then the final thing we do is we call wrap up, and we talk about all the things you need to wrap up the search. How to negotiate a contract, how to notify those candidates who are unsuccessful, the legal obligations that you have in terms of starting files and keeping files for a certain period of time, for EEOC qualifications and requirements, and then also in terms of what you need to do in actual hiring, that 17-day process. 10 days of posting the contract, a public hearing, 7 days later you can hire the superintendent. At that point, we give you all the applications, we walk away. But we're still available. Sometimes I have school boards that call me 30 times after that. Sometimes I have school boards that are really good and they do it all on their own. It's really all up to you. Couple points I want to follow up with. We're not the only game in town. I'm sure you've already scheduled some other groups as well. The 2 other main groups in Indiana that are actively involved in searches are the Indiana School Board Association and administrative assistants. We're a free service. We're free because the 4 universities provide our service as a free service to school corporations. The only thing we ask for is reimbursement for mileage from our homes. Most of us are retired or close to retirement age and will be traveling a distance. It's nice to have that. We also ask that you provide a working lunch the day that we come and meet with you, usually at Subway sandwiches. Though I have one guy that says, make sure they always get cookies as well. So we're a free service. The other 2 services charge. School Board Association, I think, used to start at $2,500 up to $5,000 for their service. Administrative assistance is about the same, but if you use some other services there, sometimes they'll kick this in as a benefit as well. Why should you pick us? Well, one, I'm a little prejudiced, but we're by far the best. We do more searches than all the other groups combined every single year, which includes school boards doing their own searches, which you're welcome to do as well if you decide to do that. We, again, are from the 4 major universities that produce these students, so we know them. We've all been superintendents, so we've been down that path of not only being superintendents, but working with school boards, so we know how to handle that. The School Board Association has 1 man that was a superintendent and the other man that has not been a superintendent. Administrative assistants has superintendents, but sometimes they lead searches with principals as well. When you sit down with us, you get 4 opinions. You sit down with either one of the other groups, you're going to get 1 opinion because 1 person's going to work with you. Administrative assistants often tells you who to hire. We would never do that. That's not our job. And again, one of the things that I think is a real benefit is, and I'm not trying to put myself in a spotlight, but I know Vigo County. I've worked at Indiana State for 15 years. I go clear back all the way to the Dr. Dwayne Moore days, which many of you probably don't even know who that is, but that was back in the 80s as superintendent. Matter of fact, his wife was my assistant principal when I was a principal. So I'm very aware of the history behind Vigo County, what's going on in the past, what's going on in the present. Like the other groups cannot say that. They just simply cannot say that. So are they qualified groups? Sure they are. But we just happen to feel like we do a better job because we've done this a lot longer than they have. You can also do a national search. That's the 4th option or 5th option if you consider doing your own. National search groups are good. They brought you Dwayne Moore back in the 80s, quite honestly. But usually what happens is when they do searches, they'll call one of the four of us and say, hey, here's some good candidates in Indiana that we might call and recruit for this job. I'll post this, and Tom probably hasn't seen this yet, but he will. I post a posting to every superintendent in the state of Indiana about the opening. I recruit people that I think would be good for the job. My colleagues will do the same. And in the end, we'll do everything we can to serve you in any way possible. So with that, I'll open it up for questions because I talk too much.
We have a couple, Terry.
Yeah, Rick.
Number of superintendents retiring this year in the state. I hear a number of 50 plus.
I've heard numbers all the way from 55 down. From my experience, I think by the time we're done, come around time school starts next year, it may be in the 40s. That's what it was last year. One of the things you get with superintendent searches is the openings become kind of exaggerated in a sense because there'll be superintendents retiring, superintendents leaving because school boards change and they know it's time to hit the road and move on to somewhere else. And then you have the domino effect. So this superintendent in District A comes to Vigo County, takes a job. Now, that job is open. So another superintendent will take that job. And sometimes we start searches in January and we're still working on that domino effect clear up until August or September. So last year was about 45. I think that's what it'll be again.
And the last question I had, do you keep track of your success rate of superintendents that we've selected with your help that stay in the job 3 to 5 years?
We've tried to follow up on that as much as we can. And occasionally, we're not perfect. We'll recommend someone, the school board will select one of our candidates and it doesn't work. One of the things we've found over time is the biggest thing that really causes a school board to hire a candidate is not the skill set. It's the personality relationship with the school board. The communication skills they have with you, they have with the public, how they get along with the staff, those are the critical factors. What we've seen over time is we've had really good success. There's a few places that we've seen where that's not worked out. A good example would be Maryville. In Maryville, we put together a slate of candidates. They hired someone. That person failed miserably. By agreement, he was let go. Went to another corporation and failed after that we didn't do the search. But the school board amazingly called us back and said, it wasn't your fault, we made a bad selection. Sometimes school boards say, hey, you helped us with the last search, we ended up with a bad superintendent, we're not using you again. Again, we don't tell you who to hire, we only put forth a slate of candidates and we look at their qualifications in doing that. And sometimes the board can just make a mess with that. Miss, M-I-S-S, not M-E-S-S. But pretty well we've had great success, and when I've looked through the list over the years, a lot of the people that we have moved on to other jobs or retired because we've been doing this long enough, but we still have a large number still in place.
Okay, thank you.
Does the survey and the community input gathering, I feel like that's a critical component for that, especially for us. I'm just looking at your timeline and you have 1 to 2 weeks to prepare the advertisement and I mean, how does that overlap with the application and like setting that up and how the survey information would feed into that? Can you explain that a little bit better?
Great question, Amy. The survey's an easy piece to use because you have flexibility in the timeline. We'll focus on building that application and advertisement with you in the beginning. We'll ask the corporation to build the advertisement, but I'll give you samples to look at so you can see those and what other school corporations have done. I'll build the application for you as soon as we've agreed. I'll put it together, I'll send it back for your approval. We'll build that survey, usually takes a day or two to build it. But because of the timeline of that, you may not need to see the results of the survey until all your applications are back. So you're gonna have a pretty good timeline in terms of having that application out there for people to take. What we recommend with surveying is 2 weeks. You post it, and you've taken surveys probably on your computers. You open up your computer, there's a survey, you decide, I'm gonna take it right now or I'm not gonna take it. And that's what will happen with this. It'll happen, people look at it, they wanna take it, boom, they'll take it. The first 2 days, you'll get the majority of your surveys submitted. The rest of the week, 1 or 2 here or there, whatever. The second week, we say, send it out again and remind people it's still available. And people go, oh, I didn't do it the first time, I still want to do it. You have a bunch of people the first couple of days. By the end of the second week, no one's looking at the survey. So we say, post it 2 weeks. We'll shut it down at that point. We'll run results. It takes me about 2 hours to put the results together to get them to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Terry, do you know of what other school corporations, maybe similar sizes of ours, or up or down, to a couple thousand students that have vacancies now? Maybe are we competing against in some ways? Ones that have multiple high schools. That's kind of my thought.
That's a really good question too, because right now there are no other school corporations your size competing. The districts that we're facing right now, we've completed several searches. Have one tomorrow night, as I mentioned. We had one last week. Are small districts, one person shows, or maybe having an assistant superintendent, that being it. You're considered a large district. No other large districts right now have posted their openings. They may. It's still early. One of the things we'll see in the next few weeks is those superintendents at board organization meetings like tonight may begin announcing that they're going to retire because they see this new board is not going to support them. That's why it's really important for you to jump on this quick before other districts do that. But right now, I'm not aware of any big districts comparative in size to Vigo County that will have searches, which is an advantage for you.
Did you say you were Superintendent Spencer Owen?
Yes, I was.
Is that before or after Gordon Wells?
Gordon Wells was my mentor.
And you married Deborah Crash Keller, correct?
Yes, I did.
You do know that Rick and I went to high school with her.
Really? I didn't. I'll have to tell her that. Yeah, my wife's a retired pediatrician from Jasonville.
Well, and she bought Gordon's, she was with Gordon's wife in practice in Spencer.
Yeah, when she first began her practice and completed med school, and we moved down to Spencer, she was in Diane's office, and they're still good friends. I saw Gordon about a month ago. But yeah, Gordon Wells was superintendent, Spencer Owen. There was one in between us, and then I was superintendent there for 9 years. Love my district.
How many other corporations are you currently working with?
We just, like I said, we just finished Bloomfield. We're doing Peru Wednesday night. We have North, I'm not leading the search. Which north is it? Way up north. One of the northern small school districts. We may be helping Maconaquah. That's still kind of up in the air right now. They've been struggling to try to decide what they want to do for several months now. But those are the only active ones we have right now. We've finished several others recently. Matter of fact, we just finished Attica as well this week. We had 3 going that were posted until January 1. So you'll get pretty much our full attention. And what happens is there's always one of us that leads a search. So if I'm leading your search because of the size of your corporation, I probably won't take on leading any other searches. My colleagues will have to pick those up.
Thank you.
I want to say I've had the pleasure of working with many people in Vigo County, Tom included. It's always been a pleasure. Always loved working with Vigo County. Great people, a concerned community, which I think you do value their input, and that seems to be very well respected. So,
in your opinion, at this timeline that we have currently, when should we be making our decision on how best to move forward? I mean, is it a week? Is it 2 weeks? I mean, when do you suggest we have this decision made?
I would say as soon as possible. If you could make it tonight, it would be wonderful, and I know you're probably interviewing other groups as well and have those scheduled, but every day you delay, it means that somebody else may be looking at applying somewhere and opening up, and that limits your chances. What a lot of candidates will do is if they're really interested in a district, sometimes they'll say, this is the one I want, but if another one comes along that's pretty comparable, they're not going to say, I'm not going to apply for that and wait for Vigo County to happen. So you can't move too quickly. Once you get it out there, you can be a little more generous with your timeline in terms of setting everything up, but you can't move too quickly.
Thank you.
What's going to be our biggest challenge filling this position? Just your honest opinion.
You want me to say this, Rick?
I do, whatever.
Okay. I think your biggest challenge is your next superintendent may be someone who is a fixer, and you find out that they're a short-time person as well. Because you have some issues that really need addressed with your facilities and some different things right now, that person may come in and have to make some very unpopular decisions that would be the right decisions, but some people may not like those. And that may cause a person to not be your superintendent very long. But hopefully you don't find someone like that. You find someone that can work admirably with your staff and your community, and they come in and it just all works for them. It takes a super individual to be superintendent. So, it's something that you really have to look at carefully, and that's why it's in your hands. You've been elected by the public to do this, and it's the biggest responsibility you have, no more than anything else, is hiring your superintendent. So I did forget to add one thing, and this is for Tom's benefit. When we vet those candidates in, we do not vet internal candidates. If Tom ends up applying, we would say, you know Tom better than we know Tom, so we should not vet him in or out. If you want any opinions, we'll offer them, but you should make the decision on whether or not you interview any internal candidates. So.
Thank you for that.
You got a lot of strengths, and I really am impressed. Give me a weakness you have.
A weakness that we have? Well, I will tell you a couple things I left out that are strengths. One, maybe this is a weakness, Rick.
Okay.
We never try to push our candidates from our own universities. I don't care if they're from Ball State or IU or Purdue or any of those three inferior universities compared to Indiana State, which I tell my colleagues all the time, they always love that. But we don't push our own individual candidates. But quite honestly, and maybe this is a weakness, and this is true, most of the good candidates come from Indiana State University. We have people transfer into our EDS program and our PhD program because we're more of a hands-on experience training program than the other three universities. And consequently, over 40% of the superintendents in Indiana are graduates of either an EDS or a PhD from ISU. So I'm proud of that, but I don't push that on my colleagues because there's great people that graduate from the other universities. And we have placed people from universities like Jackson State and University of Kentucky, other universities as well. We only want the best candidate for the job. Our biggest weakness is we're not always right. No matter how hard we try, we're human like everyone else. Sometimes we recommend someone that we think might be good, and it turns out they're not. We do our best. Our reputation's on the line every time we do a search. So we're very cognizant of what we're doing, because if we go into a corporation and we do a terrible job, then that's going to reflect back on our ability to do any searches. So we're very conscientious. That's about it.
Thank you.
Do you ever cast the net wider than Indiana? I mean, I know that you said where you post it, but I mean, there could be like those candidates from University of Kentucky or someplace like that, or like Iowa or, someplace. How do you find those people?
Most time when you go out of the state of Indiana, they charge you to post. And if you do a national posting, like Monster or somewhere like that, they charge you to do that. That would be an expense. If you wanted us to do that, we can do that, but you would have to pick up the expense because we don't have an expense account. That's one of the bad things. As you can see, the packets I put together are my own packets. So, but we can do that. We have, at request of some districts, especially when we've done some in southern Indiana, to please post us in Kentucky. We just don't get the returns. And a good example of this is we did, I'm trying to think of the name of the district right now, a district that bordered Ohio and Michigan in the upper part of the state. And we didn't post it in Michigan or Ohio, but we had 3 Michigan applicants that applied for the job. Now, one of the bad things about applicants from out of the state, I mean, you can find gems and it can be some really good people, but because the Indiana accounting system is so different from any other state, ask any superintendent or business manager, it's hard for people to come in Indiana and understand the budgeting system that we have. The school laws are pretty similar across all the nation. Matter of fact, I taught school law for about 15 years, and I could have used a national law book or an Indiana law book, and it all fit. But really understanding that budget was difficult for people coming in. And then sometimes just understanding the culture and the climate was difficult. But yeah, if you say to us, we want you to advertise in Illinois, for instance, we'll do our best to do that. We'll find the sources. I've got contacts in Illinois. I've actually led a search in Illinois before, believe it or not. Got a request from a district who said, will you come over here and do this for us? But I've got contacts there that we can work with as well, regional superintendents who would be glad to help us spread the word and get this out. Matter of fact, I'd probably reach out to them anyway.
If chosen, the university search team is chosen, we, as you know, we have a community that's very, they're engaged and they would like to have as much transparency as possible. What does that look like on updates and things as we move along in this search? I know a lot of people are very interested in that.
Well, first of all, we stress to you, don't put other people on your interview committee. It's your sole job to do this. And every time we tell a district this, usually they do, but I had a district once that didn't listen, and they put a group of, unfortunately, don't mean this as bad, something bad, put a group of teachers on the interview committee. First thing they said when I walked in the door afterwards was, we should have listened to you, because it really causes issues. If you have a group outside that doesn't like a candidate that the board does, then you've got controversy right off, and you don't want that. But the main thing we say to school boards is, keep the public informed every step along the way. We've decided to use a university search team or whatever group you decide to use. We have begun the search. The position is posted and will be posted for so many weeks. The team that we're working with will be collecting the applications. We'll be meeting with them, blah, blah, blah. After the meeting, we have begun to set up interviews to narrow down candidates. And at that point, I think you want to stay consistent with that and keep saying, we're narrowing down candidates until you make your final selection. Have one spokesperson for the board. Don't let the media or the public get one of you cornered and then somebody say something that one of the other of you has said something different. Pick one person to be that spokesperson and let that person speak for the board, and the rest of you say, I'd rather you go to so-and-so to ask for any comments at this point. But transparency, transparency is the best thing you can do for your public. Use Sue Laughlin. I mean, she's great at keeping the public informed through the newspaper, but use your parent communication system or any source that you have. Make sure your teachers know. Don't forget your support staff. They're critical. The support staff are really the people that know your community better than your teachers do, because they live in it and live with the people that send their kids to school. So don't forget them. Make sure you keep everybody informed and as involved as possible.
Thank you.
Historically, have you had many searches fail where you had to either go back to a pool or restart?
Not too many, but we had one recently. We had a school corporation that narrowed their candidate down to one and selected them. And I said, we'll help any way we can. That school board asked me to negotiate the contract with the candidate, which I did. And we came to an agreement on a Saturday evening. The candidate said, yes, I like all the terms, I'm fine with them, but I want to sleep on it. I'll call you tomorrow. Next day, he didn't call me, and I called him, and he said, well, I took another job for more money, which was a message to me that he was using the school board against his other employer at that point. Search failed. We have a money-back guarantee, because we don't charge anything anyway. So what we've been doing with that school board since is I just sent them, we reposted the position. As of January 1, I sent them a list of all the people that had reapplied, and I sent them my recommendations of people that I thought were the best candidates, just like we did before. We didn't go through the whole process of strengths and all that again because it was unnecessary. I got an email from the board president today to say that they've already set up interview with 2 of those candidates. So, knock on wood. And yes, we've had some really bad searches where it's been really difficult because of other issues, usually because of struggling school boards.
When we leave here and inevitably remember a question that we wish we would have asked while we were here, how do we get a hold of you?
I think it's the next to the last, well, it's not the next last page in this packet, but there is a page, I think, like page 4 or 5 or 3, somewhere in there, that has the 4 of our team members listed. My
Page
email
5.
address is there. It's real simple. It's tmcdaniel@ISU, or indstate.edu.
Great.
You can email me. My phone number's there. If you want to talk and chat, my cell phone, I'm available. Just give me a call. I'm free all day tomorrow if you think it's something, and on Wednesday, I'll be driving to Peru to meet at 4 o'clock with their school board, so you can call me on my way up or call me Friday.
I will share personal experience. Terry has been very responsive and very forthcoming on how to reach him, and I've had great conversations with you, Dr. McDaniel, so thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. And I am Terry, too. No formalities with me. So, my wife doesn't call me doctor, even though she's a doctor, so. Any other questions? You've had a full night tonight. I really admire the evening that you've had. Congratulations on your new appointments and all you new officers and committee members. I wish you the best and wish you the best in your endeavors. You've got a good man leading you in the interim. A lot of respect for Tom, and I wish him the best as well. He got a good start tonight with his speech, so congratulations, Tom.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Terry.
You're very welcome. Feel free to call.
Absolutely. At this point, do we want to have any conversation, or have we filled our brains to the maximum and we need to go home and think? We do have another presentation scheduled for, Stacy, help me out here.
I do not have ISBA scheduled yet. With everyone's schedules.
Right, okay,
have
so that
this,
our next
so-
order of business is to get that done as soon as possible. And then, I guess I will make phone calls tomorrow, for a potential third. I think we need to have at least 3. Does anyone else have thoughts on that?
I agree.
Yeah. Get those done as soon as possible, so.
Do we want to try to have those the same, our evenings? I mean, that seems to be,
I believe as soon as possible.
Yeah, and we can do those virtually, is that the case?
I know with Dr. Horton with ISB, or C. Horton with ISBA, yes, he can be
Okay.
virtual.
So that might be helpful with everyone's travel schedules here while we're all working. So, okay, well,
We
we will
don't look
get
at
those
any
scheduled.
dates. I mean, 6 of us are here. We probably got calendars.
Yeah, we had talked about the 17th as
Okay.
that was, I thought that was already on the schedule,
That's
I
sorry.
think we have 6:30 on the 17th.
That we
in the
do,
book.
that's right.
Yeah. We just don't have confirmation, Stacy, from ISBA.
I will call Steve
Okay,
first
you've
thing in the
already been
morning.
doing that, yeah.
Mhm. Are you comfortable with
Yeah,
that?
oh, yeah,
Okay.
go right ahead. 6:30 on the, sorry,
That's 17th on
17th.
Tuesday, yeah.
would be the next one, and,
I can't do that, but that's okay. That's okay. I've got a game that night. I've got a
can we could do a recording so that you have.
That'd be fine. That'd be
Okay.
fine, yeah.
Yeah, and is there a way, Mrs. Stuckey, is there a way to do that if it's virtual to have a public element?
I'm sure we can find someone to help me figure that out.
Okay, if we could get on that and just make sure that there's a link somewhere with everyone all over the place, just because we've got to get it done, so.
Will we just do that again here that evening?
If we're virtual, then it would be virtual.
You wanted it streamed as well?
Yeah, so that, same,
Jonathan, do we have, we all need to be together, and then the presentation can be given to us virtually, not from our own
Oh,
homes?
forgive me, I'm sorry, I misunderstood that. Okay, so we would need to be here physically.
Yeah, at least 4.
Okay, but there would be a recording for anyone who couldn't be there, right? We can make that happen. Okay,
And
so
you would
he
also-
would be
you
virtual.
would also, any meeting that is available to the public, public comment needs to be invited.
Yes.
So tonight as well.
Oh, absolutely. Is there anyone here who is in the public who would like to make a comment before we're finished for the evening? Doesn't look like it. Okay.
I just feel as a parent in this community, I don't necessarily think we need to look at ISU. Is that the same gentleman that brought Hayworth in here?
I don't know.
I mean, if that's the case, we definitely need to look outside the box, because clearly
university search team last time.
Yeah, no. And it needs to be broader because at this point, anybody who comes into that superintendent position, they have a big shoe to fill. Because it started with the news and it's trickling down. And the community don't trust none of you at all. Even if you were newly elected, they don't trust you. So that needs to be taken into consideration. 100%.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you for reminding me to do that. So I guess our next appointment will be on the 17th at 6:30, pending confirmation with ISBA. Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Okay. So moved and seconded. Jackie's not online anymore. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, this meeting is adjourned.